Hi, my name is Nico van Straalen. I'm a professor of animal ecology of the Faculty of Science of the Vrije Universiteit, and I'm delighted to be associated with the course on human evolution and development that I'm going to give in March next year. We're going to use this book on human evolution and development. And in the course, we're going to deal with a lot of different topics, and I'm sure you will be very interested because also I'm very much interested in that topic myself. I will explain to you why it is so very important that you, students of biomedical science, learn something about human evolution. It is really important. What we're going to do, first of all, we're going to review all the different species of hominins that have lived in Africa since about 6.5 million years ago. About 6.5 million years ago, the hominin lineage split off the chimpanzee, let's say the ape lineage, and they started to walk upright. And that turned out to be an enormously important evolutionary innovation, because that lineage radiated, as the ecologists say, radiated into many different species, sometimes even 5 species living at the same time in Africa, in different places. In total, paleontologists have found fossils of 26 different hominin species. They went all extinct, except for one, of course, that is us, Homo sapiens. And we know the other one that was relatively recently also extinct now, the Neanderthal, that went extinct about 30,000 years ago. We, Homo sapiens, originated about 320,000 years ago. So what we're going to do, we're going to review all these different species of hominins, and I'll tell you something about every species and all the fossils that have been found. But we're also going to look, and this will interest you as biomedical science students, we're also going to look at the human body. The human body has a lot of evolutionary heritage from our ancestors. I'll give you one example. Have a look at the nervus laryngeus, which innervates the larynx, which is situated here. Right, that nerve comes out of the nervus vagus, which is one of the cranial nerves, and it runs down the neck and then into the breast cavity, and then with a U-turn around the aorta, and then runs up again to innervate the larynx. Why does that nerve make such a stupid U-turn? And I tell you, it's not only evident in us, but it's in all mammals. Even in a giraffe, for example. Even in a giraffe, the nerve comes down from the brain and goes into the thorax and then goes up again to the larynx, to the head of the giraffe. Why would that be? It is an evolutionary relic. It proves that we share an ancestor with fish, because in fish all these structures were much more closer to the head, and they have gone down into the thorax, and they took the nerve, the laryngeus, they took them with them. Not only the human bodies, we're going to look in great detail in human genetics. We're going to have a look at certain genes that make us human. People call them human accelerated regions. These are pieces of DNA that are very similar between chimpanzees and all mammals. So you would say they are very much conserved. They didn't change very much. But they changed especially and only in the human lineage. These pieces of DNA, we know a few thousands of them nowadays. These pieces of DNA must be very important. They must be related to brain development, to our dietary habits that changed in the course of hominin evolution, maybe to our walking upright, to our bipedalism. And these pieces of DNA have been isolated and studied to a very great extent, and it turns out that many of them relate to the brain. Many of them are expressed or are regulatory sequences that are expressed in the brain. We're also going to look at the distribution of humans across the world. It turns out that we, as a species, Homo sapiens, we originated in Africa. We are all Africans. We differ from each other only very, very, very little. The difference between Europeans and Asians and Africans is very, very, very small. So genetically speaking, we are all the same, although of course we are different in certain aspects. And then we are different, especially when we live further away from each other. So it turns out that when you look at the distribution of Homo sapiens across the world, you isolate DNA, you also isolate ancient DNA from samples of old bones that are present in these places, and you compare that all together, then you find out that the human species has been showing great and very large migrations, and that in many places in the world, the people that are living there are not the same people as they were living as were living in the past. It turns out that migration is a very prominent aspect of human evolution. And then finally, I'm going to just let me give you one more example showing the importance of knowing things on evolution relative to your biomedical science program. Today, I tell you, today I read an article, a pre-publication on the web, which shows that a certain segment of chromosome 3 in our DNA, in our genome, a certain segment of chromosome 3 is shown to be a risk factor for coronavirus disease. So the people that have that particular, this combination of segments are more prone to develop disease when they are infected with coronavirus. Now it turns out that about 50,000 bases of that particular segment is has a Neanderthal signature. It comes from Neanderthal. How can that be? Because Homo sapiens, when it moved out of Africa, it met Neanderthal. Neanderthal was already living in the Middle East and in Europe and in Central Asia. In Eastern Europe, I should say. That meetings sometimes came with hybridizations, with interbreeding. And that is the reason why we all have a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA in our genome. In Europeans, about 2.5%. In Asians, for some reason, a little bit more. It's not the same piece of DNA that each of us has, because that DNA, that Neanderthal DNA, was recombined with human DNA many times, so it got distributed over the whole chromosome. Now, some people bear a piece of DNA on chromosome 3, which comes from Neanderthal, that makes them at a higher risk when they are infected with coronavirus disease, with coronavirus. So higher risk of having a disease. I thought that was a perfect illustration, which I happened to read today, of the relevance of knowing more about human evolution. What kind of biological species are we? How do we relate with other species? What makes us human? What is in our genes, our genome, that makes us human? That we can think, we can develop culture, we can do so many more things compared to apes. But what is it that makes us human? How did we evolve all these properties? That is going to be the topic of the course on human evolution and development, and I would love to see you all on that course in February, March next year.